Hello, YouTube friends. It's been a while I haven't actually made a video, but at this time I decided to make another video. It has to do with the Sephardic origins or Sephardim. I am a Sephardic Jew, and every time I speak to people and they ask me, so what are you, where are you from? You look a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I let them know, hey, I'm a Sephardic Jew. And they their reaction is like, what? What is that? And so I would say 9 people out of 10 really don't know what Sephardic Jews are, especially here in the United States. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna make a video. I'm gonna share more about the origins, the heritage, and more about how we are connected with biblical times, so connected with the book of the Bible, and how long we've been around. So I would like to share some of the highlighted, historical parts of the origin. So so that's what happened. A lot of people confuse us with other Jews, Hasidic Jews. Most, you probably saw, the people that wear a little hat, big hat, and so they also are called Ashkenazi Jews. So we have different communities, and I would like to share this with you guys. We have the Mizraim or Mizrahi Jewish community, usually from the North Africa, Babylonians. I'll share more about it so you get to know more about that community. We see everyone like a family. We're just one community. Yeah, we do have different communities because it depends on the region that people live. And we have survived through Jewish communities all over the world since before Roman times. So being part of a Jewish community, it was not just practicing religion. It was something it's done also for survival. We were able to practice what's called halakha, the Jewish law, in some other foreign lands like Arabic countries. They they allow us to do that, and I will share more about a lot of Jewish people that live among Arabic countries and how they intermarry with Arabic people as well. So we have the Ashkenazim or Ashkenazi Jews, right, that are very commonly known in the United States. And so it depends where the Jewish community lives, that's the type of customs, they have. And Sephardic Jews, it's another Jewish community. We go back to probably before Roman times. So I'm going to share that with you guys and how we're connected with not only with history, but also with the biblical history. All right, so we have that. I think we have 3 major Jewish communities, and we are kind of intermingled together, but we still have what's called Siddur, right? The Ashkenazi community, they kind of use their own Siddur. I think the Ethiopian Jewish community also have their own Siddur. Then we as Sephardim also have our own Siddur, and so forth. So in the Mizraim, right? So you probably heard of people saying that Sephardic Jews, it's a religion, and actually it's not a religion. It's the culture, the ethnic culture of of people that live in certain regions, and then all of a sudden they, we kind of are virtually everywhere in the world. So what I would like to do is I'm going to share the screen, and I'm going to start with Roman times. How do we go back to Roman times? As you probably heard of Vespasian. Vespasian was an emperor, one of the emperors of Rome, and he was, as you can see here, from before Christ, right? He is a Roman, not before Christ, but actually during the siege of Jerusalem, was 69 to 70. Okay, not before Christ, right after Christ. But there's history there that I would like to share with you guys. But prior to that, I'm going to share this. There's actually somebody that I would like to share, another emperor before Christ. And this one is the emperor of Cpos Africanus. His full name is Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus. That's 200, if you can see here, before Christ. It was a Roman general. Okay, there was a great military leader, and he was the one who was actually in charge of, you know, the Punic Wars, right, in the Mediterranean, Tunisia, you know, with the sorry, I apologize for the pronunciation, Carthaginians. Okay, so I highlighted some of the stuff here. I don't want to bore you with reading all that, everything, but I highlighted the important stuff. So it gives you a perspective how we fitting as Sephardic Jews in throughout history. Okay, so now that you know who he is, okay, it says he was in charge as a general, one of the important generals of Rome, for, you know, with different military campaigns. One was in Hispania. So the Romans, you know, saw the Ivarian Peninsula, or Sepharad. That's kind of like the ancient name that was given, Hispania, and then Sepharad, in which is now modern day Spain. So I'm going to read the highlighted part, the highlighted part of it. Okay, in 211 BC, both Scipio's father Publius Scipio and uncle Niños Cornelius Scipio Calvus were killed at the Battle of Upper Baetus in Spain against Hannibal's brother, Hasdrubal Barca. Hasdrubal Barca was actually a Phoenician. The Carthaginians were known as the Phoenicians, the people that, or ancient time, was Canaanites. Probably you heard that in biblical times, which are located in Tyre, Lebanon. So, also known as the Tarshish, people of Tarshish. Okay, I'm going to share more about that. But they actually were located in Spain, the Iberian Peninsula, Spain. Okay, so I'm going to read. At the election of a new proconsul for the command of the new army, which the Romans resolved to send to Hispania, or modern-day Spain. Okay, so in the year Scipio arrival was 211 BC. All Hispania south of the Ebro River was under which control? Carthaginian control, Phoenicians. Okay, so that was how long. How long they've been there? I'm gonna share more in some other area, another part of the history, but they've been there since 800 BCE. So the generals of Carthaginian forces in Hispania, and Rome was aided by the inability of these three figures to act in concert. The Carthaginians were also preoccupied, or they took over with revolts in Africa, like Tunisia. Those are the Mediterranean parts of the lands of the Mediterranean. So we got this Carthaginians, right? So my thing, well, how are we related to this? Well, we are connected because in biblical times, Carthaginians were known as the Phoenicians, okay? And they were known by building ships, okay? And so that's how we know that a lot of people from the northern tribe of Israel were actually sent to Spain through the ships of Tarshish. And we Obadiah 1:20 says, you know, I would like to read it. So since we're here, Obadiah 1:20, and it says, the exiles, the Israelites who are in Halah, you know, who are among the Canaanites, remember, among the Canaanites, which is basically the people of Tarshish, or the Carthaginians or Phoenicians. As far as Seraphat, as well as the exiles of Jerusalem who are in Sepharad, who possess the cities of the Negev. So he's talking about Jerusalem, part of Jerusalem, right? But he's talking about two people in two locations, one in Jerusalem and also the Israelites that are with the Canaanites. And that's how the word Sepharad is the ancient name, you know, for the Sephardic Jews. And I'm gonna share more where you see the correlation by, you know, Persians, you know, how the Persians knew the Sephardic Jews, and they use a different word for Sepharad, and the Persians, the Assyrians, the Romans, and first century philosophers as well use the word Sephora as people who are Israelites who live in the Iberian Peninsula. Okay, so this is the biblical, one of the biblical, what do you call this, locations where the exiles of the Israelites. the main thing here is that the exile of the Israelites were with among the Canaanites. And that's why I'm bringing the historical part of Spain, Iberian Peninsula, okay? Because that's the relationship, okay, of the biblical times with the Israelites, exiles. Now, if we go here, even the Apostle Paul, Romans 15, he's making the connections also for his missionary work when he used to go to Spain. We're talking about 40 AD, around 40 AD, right? And there was already known people that live in Spain, okay, Jewish communities. Okay, so if you go to Romans 15:24, you see right here, I'm gonna highlight it. Whenever I travel to Spain, for I hope I see you when I pass through, which is the Mediterranean Sea, to be assisted by you for my journey is missionary preaching. Once I have first enjoyed your company for a while. So that means the location is Spain or Iberian Peninsula. And that's what I'm going to share. And back, and there's other references about the Vulgate and other, philosophers and scholars mentioning that place, Sepharad, was where that was a Sephardic community, Jewish community. And then we read in 28, and says, so when I have finished this and safely deliver the funds to them, I will visit you on the way to Spain. So this is the only time that Paul mentioned Spain. Okay, a few times in a couple of verses. It was because there were Sephardic Jewish communities. They helped the apostle Paul to fund his missionary work or help him out with that. Okay, so now we have this biblical reference, right? Now, you might think, well, what other reference do we have besides that the Sephardic Jews or Jews live in Spain? Because, you probably heard about the lost sheep of Israel, right? So they say it's lost. Nobody knew where they went, but the Bible was the biblical Obadiah 120 tells a location, okay? And really specifically where. And then we see also where Apostle Paul also giving a location. At that time, right, they were saying, quote unquote, the lost sheep, but they're not lost. They were just scattered. Okay. Now here we see another one is another Scipio Hispanus, right? And he says here, if you see it, he says he then became like Edel, which is basically an office in the Roman Republic. And he says probably in 141 BC, he was in 130. He was a praetor, or he was just a government official. But my point here is in 139 BC, okay, they expelled Chaldeans and Jews from the city of Rome. So that means at that time, 130 BC, according to this historical reference, and now I think, but this is a free library. But if you want to get, academic sources, all you got to do is just check these different things like this, right? Or we'll check the footnotes. Like sometimes it has a footnote where you can get all these footnotes right here, bibliography of this guy, and he's the one who actually discussed about Scipio Hispanus. So it is a free library where you can get the academic sources, where you can just look the footnotes and bibliographies. But here is the astrologers, Chaldeans, those Iraqi people from Iraq, and they say in Jews who live in so. And people, where these Jews went, if they were expelled, they went to, where's the closest city of Rome? It's the Iberian Peninsula. In the Iberian Peninsula of Spain, it was the Mecca of the Jewish community, and because there was a center of higher learning besides Alexandria, Egypt. Alexandria, Egypt was another Jewish community of higher learning. Not to mention, there's they had one of the largest library, but it was known by that, and it was a center also of people doing really well off because Spain was flourishing. When I say flourishing, means there were a lot of it was very civilized, because as we know, there were other civilizations that got there, and there was a lot of trading and so forth, like Carthagena, the Phoenicians, right? Way before the Roman Empire. Okay, so now we have this, right? and then we see Scipio. So here, talking about Cpos is 1 second here. Vespasian. Now we read on Vespasian, something that I want to share with them. Vespasian is after Christ. So here, after his death in 79, he was succeeded by his eldest son Titus, thus becoming the first Roman emperor to be succeeded by his own natural son and establishing the Flavian Dynasty. So Vespasian, through his son Titus, started a dynasty of emperors, and the Flavian Dynasty is very important because they're the one who basically started working through Jewish wars and being against the Jews, expelling Jews, and so forth. The first expulsion of the Jews were actually in around 40 AD. It was not necessarily 70 AD, 70 AD. So we're going to read. We got the Flavians are the one who fought all the way to Emperor Hadrian in 133. So there were several Jewish wars trying to expel the Jews from Jerusalem. Even though they already destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, you know, a lot of Sephardic Jews or Jews at that time, they really didn't want to let go of Jerusalem. They really put a lot of resistance with the Romans. You know, we are one of the few people that we gave a lot of resistance to the Roman Empire. And that's why we always have this adversity too as well. Now, and we're going to read more here. So now we have the Flavian Dynasty, right? And then guess what? We see during the siege of Jerusalem, Flavius Josephus, as he was part of that siege of Jerusalem, became a negotiator between the Romans and the Jewish people. And that's how he became sort of a historian, because he started writing down everything that he was seeing, talking to people, and so forth. Okay, so we are very well known Sephardic Jews to be not only known as Sephardic Jews. I'm going to show you more historical evidence that we actually were part of the royal house of David. I'm going to read it right now. It's interesting because during the 40 AD, there were actually an expulsion of Jews by the Romans, and then 70 AD was another massive expulsion. Okay, so it reads, so the Jewish resistance leader captured the siege of Jaffa, right? You can see it right here. It was just about 3 years before 69 AD, who later write his peaceful history in Greek, okay? So not only we have this in Hebrew, written in Hebrew, we got in Greek, right? And then in Latin. So ultimately, thousands of Jews were killed, and the Romans destroyed many towns, reestablishing control over Judea. They also took Jerusalem in 70 AD. Vespasian is remembered by Josephus writing as a Roman citizen in his Antiquities of the Jews, right? Now, we read, this is important. While under the emperors of patronage, Josephus wrote that after the Roman Legion 10 Fretenses, accompanied by Vespasian, and Vespasian took a group of Jews who could not swim possibly the Essenes. I'm sorry about, I can't really pronounce, I didn't pronounce that. But these people were actually the ones that, remember the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Essenes, from Quran. This is actually 200 BC. There's a little historical connection here. They're the ones that is mentioned here with the, Josephus. So indeed, the captives bobbed up into the surface after being thrown into the water from the boats, right? Unfortunately, they didn't know how to swim. And then Josephus, as well as Tacitus, okay, another historian, reporting on the conclusion of the Jewish war, reported a prophecy that around that time, when Jerusalem and Second Temple would be taken, a man from their own nation, right, the Messiah, would become the governor of the habitable earth. This is important, guys, because Josephus now is telling Vespasian, okay, that we were expecting a Messiah. This is a historical part. It's a historical part because now we have basically history that there was a Messiah, right? That was supposed to be predicted. And obviously, that was 30 years before that. So it says that around that time, Jerusalem and the second temple will be taken, a man from their own nation. Messiah will become governor of the inhabited earth, or king of the Jews, right? Josephus interpreted the prophecy to denote Vespasian and his appointment as an emperor in Judea. So now, right, Vespasian is the one aware of the Messiah prophecy. After the death of Nero, 68, just 2 years before the siege of Jerusalem, right? Vespasian eventually believed that this prophecy applied to him, and found a number of omens and oracles that reinforced his belief, which basically because he basically found out for basically people they have the oracles or the Hebrew oracles or the Tanakh, and this is the reference. It's called Cassius Dio Roman History, and you can get this reference from there. So what's really happening now is Vespasian thinks that he's God on earth, and now he thinks those is the Messiah. And eventually, like the Flavians, is the one that captured this idea of establishing every emperor as a god on earth until 325 after Christ. They established the church, right? And they established the church with the idea of a Messiah. As you probably heard, now you can see from what he said here, Constantine thought that he was also as an emperor as the continuity of this prophecy. And that's what he can make according to quote unquote his vision, the vision of the cross. And he is the one who established the authority of the church. So nobody can actually question it, and whoever questions it will die. And well, I'm not going to talk about that, but that's this part of the story. Right? I thought it was interesting. Now, the new emperor, right? Once forwarded the supplies. Originally, they needed granted to Rome, along with the edict assuring that he will reserve the laws of Nero, especially those relating to treason. While in Egypt, he visited the temple of Serapis. Serapis was actually also an anointed deity, along with Mithras. And so it was kind of like a Roman Greek deity, and also Egyptian. And they had a cult, right, which also they built a temple. And so they were trying to unify basically the Roman gods and the Greek gods and the Egyptian gods into these two deities, Serapis and Mithra. And when he reported experience with vision, right, always this just a kind of connotating about the vision of this future church. Later, he was confronted by the two laborers who were convinced that he possessed a divine power that could work miracles. Now, this Serapis has also the same divinity, like similar to Jesus, somebody who can actually work miracles, just like Mithra. Okay, so this is another key part of our history because we had a lot of contentions with the Romans. They wanted us to be converted into Christianity. And not only they expelled us from Jerusalem and from our own land, but the main thing is that they wanted to convert us to the religion. And that's exactly what the Romans did. Every time they conquered a nation, they converted that nation into it also to worship and be able to adopt the Roman culture. And that's something that we never did. And that's why we have huge wars and a lot of contingencies. The emperor, after the Civil War, 69 to 79, Vespasian was declared emperor by the Senate while he was in Egypt on December 21st, 69, just before the siege, right? Just before. The Egyptians had declared him emperor in June. So now he had all the Roman control, all the power. Look what happened after that. So Vespasian, according to Eusebius, one of the church historians, after his son Titus subdued the rebellion with capture of Jerusalem and destruction of the Jewish temple in 70 AD, Vespasian then ordered all descendants of the royal line of David to be hunted down, already having been told by Josephus. Remember, he was talking about the prophecy, right? That he was prophesied to become an emperor whilst in Judea, was probably reacting to other widely known messianic prophecies circulating at that time to suppress any rival claimants arising from the dynasty. So he was in power as an emperor. He didn't want nobody to be a king, nobody to be a savior, and nobody to be actually more powerful than him. So now he ordered, and guess what they sent those people when they hunt them down? They went to Rome and to the Iberian Peninsula. Because after 70 AD, a lot of the people that were taken captive, they were sent to Rome. And remember, Rome, they always had Jews, Greece and Rome. Okay, now when I'm not talking about Gentiles, like Greeks, Jewish people. So this right here, right? So now we have this royal line of David going to Rome and to the Iberian Peninsula. Why? Because at that time, Vespasian was expanding the Roman Empire, going to Britannia, which is England, into Germania, which is German, into Hispania, because there's still other, they were expanding the Roman Empire. So that's kind of the premise to this. Okay, now we read. So now, Josephus speaks especially well of Vespasian while condemning the emperors who came before him. Tacitus, right, another historian figure, admits that his status was elevated by Vespasian. Josephus identified Vespasian as a patron and savior. Do you notice right here? Even Josephus, Flavian Josephus, think that he was a patron and savior. For some reason, he was not just a negotiator between the Romans and the Jews, but because of his position, right, he for some reason favored, I guess, partially the Romans based on what he said here. And how do we know that? Well, you can see the footnote. You can read where it says Vitellius and Propaganda of Vespasian. And I'm sure those are the pages where you can go to. Okay. Those who spoke against Vespasian were punished. So maybe Josephus wanted to just say that so he doesn't get killed, right? Because whoever spoke bad of the emperor at that time were considered treason and sedition. So that's why a lot of Sephardic Jews from Rome, Jerusalem, were actually killed, murdered by sedition and treason. So who those, this is, and then so those who spoke against Vespasian were punished. A number of historic philosophers were accused of corrupting students with inappropriate teachings and were expelled from Rome. So that means even people that were well-educated historic philosophers. So there was across the board, people were punished to death. Now, and if you notice here, it says the 75 he erected a colossal statue of Apollos. So now before was another temple, right, of another deity, and now the new emperor Vespasian rebuilt Rome after the Civil War, and now erected a big statue of Apollo, right, begun under Nero. So now, and guess what he used that to build the temple of Apollo with the spoils of the destruction of the temple, the second temple in Jerusalem. When I say spoil, I mean using the gold. It's using funds from the spoils of the Jewish temple after the siege of Jerusalem. So that's what he did. He used that to build up the temple of Apollo. All right, we keep on reading. Because Vespasian was just like Cpos, Africanus, right? They were military people, and they and generals before becoming emperors. And here the Roman expansion in Britain, 78, 79. So it says in Britain, 78, were both extended and consolidated the Roman dominion in that province, pushing his way into what's now Scotland. So there was a lot of Roman presence in Scotland and England. And they were always people, every time they capture prisoners, right, they would go with them because they were using for labor, for military labor, like building bridges or anything that has to be labor, military labor, when they were at war. So some of them, they stay there, and that's how a lot of Jewish people were taken to Rome and Britain or England. Now, here I want to show this. Let's see here. I'll highlight. All right, that's pretty much what this is. Vespasian. Vespasian shows history, how there's historical history because a lot of people believe, they think that the Bible is not, it's just a myth, when we know that there's historical evidence. And I'm showing this as just as a reference. Obviously, you can do your own research, but you know, it's like we know that George Washington existed because we have the historical evidence, historical records, Abraham Lincoln, and all this, all this president of the United States. But we have the history. Without the history, written history, there's no way we can connect, you know, their biography or bibliography with these people. In the same way with the biblical figures and biblical accounts, we can connect that with secular evidence, which is this. Okay. Now we have also, so this is the before, like very ancient times of knowing about Sepharad or Sephardic Jews. Okay, so I'm going to show you another one here. Before, give me 1 second. Okay, so knowing about the Jewish communities is very important, because Jewish communities were established not only to be able to contribute to society, as like I said, the Roman society, or to any society that we live in, Persian society, Arabic society, you know, but also is for protection, because that's how we were able to live a normal life. Other than that, there were all those other Jews that were secular Jews. You know, they kind of were on their own. And there were other Jews that called Anusim. The Anusim were known in Spain and some other place, in Spain, mostly because that was one of the biggest expulsions of the Jews, right, in 1492 to 1497. Anusim were people not just in Spain, but also in other parts of the world, where they deny basically their Sephardic heritage, and they became either Christians or became basically Muslims. Okay, so those are the types of Jewish people or Sephardic people. Now, let me show you here. Boom. I'm sharing about this guy, Benjamin of Tudela, in the 1130. He was a traveler, explorer, and this is before Marco Polo, right? Where he took a journey, and he like a sail all over the world, in the known world, where there was only Jewish communities. Okay, he was also a Jew from Spain. He was born in Tudela, Spain. Toledo is Spain, I'm sorry. Benjamin of Toledo is a major figure in the medieval geography and Jewish history. That's very important. It's also being used by Bible scholars just to like kind of see his itinerary of his ethnographical notes, meaning that, you know, the places that he went to. Okay, so his geography and ethnography was in the Middle Ages was very important, because he describes not only the everyday life of people, but describes also the type of government system they have in that land, and also how Jewish communities were able to survive during this, where they were at that land. Okay, so we read from this dude. So he was from the town called Tudela in Spain. Okay, Navarre said town of Tudela, now Spain. Today, a stream. They also erected a statue, I guess, in the Jewish quarters in Spain, and they never named him after him. So this guy really existed. You know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, that's just another myth. No, we have the evidence. Okay, we have Sephardim people. Sephardim have a lot of history from before Roman times, and from 2,000 years it will be around. Okay, I'm going to share more about how the other communities came into existence. Okay, so there's no consensus among scholars as to Benjamin of Tudela's exact route, although most scholars believe from his itinerary that he traveled on a popular route frequented by travelers at that time. Benjamin, this is based on this footnote right here, if you want to see the academic source. Benjamin set out on his journey from the northeast Ivarian Peninsula in 1165, and what may have begun a pilgrimage of the Holy Land. But around the time, remember, there was the Crusaders and all the stuff. There was a lot going on in the world, and he was just traveling, trying to find out, you know, what was going on with the Jewish communities. It has suggested that he may have had commercial motives as well as religious one. So he was interested in both. The dude speaks like, I don't know, like 8, 10 languages. So he was well versed in languages. Okay. He also was a trader or merchant, so that was the motive. It probably was a commercial motive, right? He stopped frequently meeting people, visiting places, describing occupations, and giving demographic counts of Jews in each town in a country that he visited. So we have this historical record of Jewish communities. And we're talking about the 1165. Sephardic Jews existed back then, even before that. That's a notice, before Roman Empire, before 30 AD. And his journey began in Saragossa, which is a place in Spain, right? Farther down to the valley that Ebro to Aragona, Barcelona, and Girona. Girona is also Spain. Then he proceeded to the north of France. He went to France. There was Jewish communities in France. Okay. And then went to Lucca, which is Spain. There's like 3 places in Spain: Genoa, Lucca, and Pisa, and Rome. So it's a lot of Jews in Rome. He went to Greece, where there's also a Jewish community called Romaniotti or Romani. Okay. Romani is from Rome, Romaniotti in Greece, I think. So those are Jewish communities. And Constantinople, which is basically Turkey. There were a lot of also Jewish communities in Turkey. And there's a biblical reference in James 1:1 and also 1 Peter 1:1. And I would like to go there so you can see what I'm talking about. Look. Well, I don't want to lose this right here, but because this is talking about the Turkey, right, where there's a lot of Jewish communities in Turkey. But I'm also putting it, and it's talking about the exiles of the Israelites, which we're talking about people that live in those communities. James, a servant of God and the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm reading this CSB version. So, to the 12 tribes dispersed abroad, right? And those are the ones that are scattered abroad. And then, but where abroad? Well, I'm going to go to 1 Peter. And here it says, Peter and the Apostle Jesus Christ, those chosen and also living in exile, dispersed abroad, where Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. So this is the place basically in Turkey, okay, Gentile lands. If you look at those maps, that's what it says. All right, so I thought it was interesting. Give me 1 second here. So I'm here, Benjamin of Tudela, right? Anyway, so now we see that he also went to Lebanon, Syria, and also in Israel, Mesopotamia, which is called Iraq, and Baghdad. That's another community, Jewish community called the Baghdadis. The Baghdadis are Babylonians and Syrians and Iraqis. Those are also the ones that were also in Spain. So there are Sephardic Jews. We're known Sephardic Jews because they were from Babylonian Jews, right, or Baghdadis. They call it Baghdadis. Okay, and also they're in India. So there's a big community in India, southern or northern of India. So Baghdadis also were in Persia. Okay, from there he went to Persia and to cut back across on the Arabian Peninsula. In Arabia, there were big time Jewish communities, okay, until Muhammad kicked them out, expelled them in 700 AD, around there, when he was alive. Okay, so here. So he went obviously back to North Africa. There was a lot of Jewish people in North Africa. I'm talking about Alexandria, Egypt. It was a very big Jewish community there. And then back to Iberian Peninsula in 1173. All right, so now we go here. He also described the customs of the local population, both Jewish and non-Jewish, with an emphasis of urban life. In his accounts, Benjamin Tudela describes Baghdad with great enthusiasm, making particularly note of the virtuosity of the Caliph, meaning, there was a caliphate, Muslims, they were commingling and getting along with the Jewish community. He authorized it on the respect and intermingle that encounters between Judaism and Islam. So there were times where really were some adversity, but most of the time, these Muslims really supported us. There is a law, Motimi law, from the Muslim where we have to pay the tribute to or taxes to the land but they allow us to practice halakha, which is Jewish law, and also practice our own, kind of have our own little jurisdiction. And so that's why we survive only in Jewish communities that way. Interesting, right? All right, so this Benjamin Tudela, it's a great guy. I read his book. There was actually a book written about him, but a lot of Bible scholars use his traveling itinerary to see if it's was legit or not, and definitely he is a good source of that. Now, I'm going to show you a PDF as far as Sepharad, the word Sepharad. You can look at a journal of Semitic Studies in University, published by University of Oxford University in Manchester. And it says the origin of the name Sepharad in a new interpretation, right? So I highlight a few things and look what it says. Finally, even the case that we accept that Sepharad was Sardis, it is difficult to explain the relation that there could have been between the Ivarian Peninsula and the ancient capital Lydia or Tunisia. In this, Sardis, I'm sorry. In this chapter, I want to shed some light on all these unresolved questions. You need to understand Tarshish was also known as a people of Phoenicians, right? Known for Carthaginians and the Phoenicians. So these people are the one that he's making note here that that also was known by the Persians, saying that they saw this ethnic group, right, which is basically Sephardic Jews in Sardis, okay, but not just 3 places is Lydia, Sardis, and in the Iberian Peninsula, okay. So, and basically Sepharad was just a name given to a location where there were Jewish communities. So Sepharad was known in Iberian Peninsula, Sardis, and also in Lebanon. And the Lebanon connection is when I do use the Tarshish, because from there they travel all the way to 5,000 miles from the Mediterranean to the Iberian Peninsula. So it's like you can connect the dots that way, okay? Because that's what Bible scholars said. They can relate the word. But look, I think this was interesting to find the word Sepharad here. It was the English translation from the Septuagint but this around this time by this dude in 1935, where it's mentioned not only in the Septuagint but also in the Vulgate that was like 300 to 100 years before Christ, and 300 years Vulgate 400 years after Christ. But they kind of are consistent with this. It says the English translation of that part. It says, "And this shall be a domain of captivity of the children of Israel, in the land of the Canaanites," which is basically Phoenicians, "as far as Sarepta, and the captives of Jerusalem shall inherit as far as Epharad, they shall inherit the cities of the south." So they're making that, what do you call the Obadiah, right? He's also referring to the Obadiah 120. And let me see here. So let's read out. It says, this is the Vulgate, okay, of this translation of the Vulgate. It mentions Sepharad, right, about referring to the children of Israel. So that's the connection about the captivity of the children of Israel, Sepharad, okay, and then because they stay in Jewish communities. Then here, this is about the location of a biblical Sepharad. 3 different places are proposed by modern researchers, right? We see one is second Libya, Media, second Libya, and then obviously we see that this connection has to do with the Canaanites, or basically Tarshish, with the people of Tarshish going to Ivarian. Okay, so that's just a Bible, academic scholar kind of opinion, right, of what the word Sepharad came from. So it's an ancient word. So that's my whole point. It's an ancient word. Now, Sepharad also is mentioned by the Persians in Aramaic and Assyrian inscriptions. 3rd hypotheses are based on Persian, Aramaic, and Assyrian inscriptions. The name Sepharda, they're 2 different words, appears to refer to above-mentioned ancient place names. It is important to see that what extent the cities were important for the Jewish community. See? So now they're saying that there were Jewish community on those locations, and that's how they got the name, right, for the Jewish communities. They were in the Peninsula, or where they call the Canaanites were, which is, if you noticed before, the Canaanites were kind of coming among the Israelites. Well, the Israelites were among the Canaanites, which makes the connection. Now, here's important. Look what it says here. It says, Sardis was conquered by Cyrus the Great, 547 BCE, for the Persians. Lydia and its subsidiary Ionian Greek territories remained a key satrapy until the destructive military campaigns of Alexander III of Macedon in 334 BCE. So Lydia was then dominated by different foreign rulers until it was conquered by the Romans with Punic Wars and incorporated into the Roman Empire at 133 BCE. That's close to 139 BCE of the expulsion of the Jews as well by the Romans, when it became an administrative center of the Roman province of Lydia. Okay, so they just connecting the dots about the Romans. Remember earlier I mentioned about the Punic Wars with Vespasian? Oh, no, Scipio Africanus, that's what I meant. And it was the first Jewish settlements in Sardis, talking about Jewish settlements, not necessarily the name location, is the Jewish settlements or Jewish communities, where supposedly in the 3rd century BCE, where the Seleucid king Antiochus III, right, encouraged the Jews from Babylonia and other countries to inhabit the city of Sardis. So basically it's saying that, hey, all this King Seleucid was telling the Jewish community in Sardis to be there. So that's what called Sephardic, because the Sephardic Jews lived there. And then, however, in Aramaic inscription discovered that at the Skelion to the north of Sardis, and various assigned by scholars to a date from 4 BCE. And that Sardis is close to Rome. You know, it's not too far from the Ivarian Peninsula either. I mean, the proximity level, proximity between Sardis, Rome, and the Ivarian Peninsula. And variously, it says assigned by scholars to a date from 450 to 400 BCE. Gives an evidence of presence of rich Jewish family there. So we're connecting Jewish communities with Sardis, and also with all the other references like the king, the Persian king. So that's the connection of Sepharad. Another one here. It says, when the city was captured by the Sasanian Persians, it was never rebuilt, and the Jewish community of Sardis ceased to exist, right? That's when they moved to Iberian Peninsula, which is very close there. It says the Persians took over Sardis in the name of Sparta. In the Lydian Aramaic bilingual inscription from the Academian period, dated 450 BCE, from Sardis, a Hebrew Aramaic place name of Sardis. This is the Hebrew name. So it's basically the same. That's the same thing like the other comment, right? About how they were Jewish communities in Sardis, right? And then now he says that they stopped being there, they moved. So it's like they moved because they were expelled. That's the reason why. We were expelled from many places. Here, from Sepharad to Hispania to the Iberian Peninsula. Even this article published by the university says, from Sepharad, which is from Sardis to Hispania, basically Spain, or the Iberian Peninsula. The Aramaic translated the biblical term Sepharad in Obadiah 120 into Hispania. So some Bible scholars also kind of connect the dots like that, historical dots. And it seems that the Targum, Jonathan, that's like first man, this is like very first century, right? The Targums, the Targum, Jonathan, the official Aramaic translation of the prophetic books made by Jonathan ben Uziel. So he is also another Jewish scholar, right? That he connected, he said that Sepharad was basically in the Iberian Peninsula, where there were a Jewish community called Sephardic Jews. Here it is. It says Sepharad is also translated as Hispania or Hispania by the Romans. Hispania or Hispania was the name for the given by the Romans, and also in the Peshitta Bible. Peshitta Bible is kind of like goes back to the Septuagint, which is 200, 300 BCE, and also the Targum was actually about 200, 100 BCE all the way to 100 AD. And it says the standard version of the Syriac Christian Bible, which is the Peshitta, right, translated to Syriac and also Aramaic, Hebrew and Aramaic, which was probably written in the 2nd century, 200, right? The Old Testament of the Peshitta was translated directly from the Hebrew, right? And it gives you a reference right there. From the moment on, is usually to find in the most biblical Hebrew literature the name Sepharad, referring to the Ivarian Peninsula. It appears in the works of Sephardic Jews and also referred to the Spanish Christian authorities. And this is actually the reference. So you see this we go back to when 200, 300, 800 BC, all the way to the Iberian Peninsula. All right, so this is actually the academic sources. When we go back, I think that's pretty much it. I don't think I highlighted anything else. No, this is all the just the sources where they got this name. It says the descendants of Iberian Jews refer to themselves as Sephardim, and in modern Hebrew Spain is still identified as Sepharad. And it's following the archaeological, paleographical, and other evidence. The presence of the Jewish Sephardim must be dated after the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem during the government of Titus 70 AD. See, I kind of mentioned that earlier, because there was a big expulsion of Jews in the 40 ADs and the 70 ADs. Okay, so now we have, okay, so people that were now in Jews, there were Jews in the Iberian Peninsula. Catalonia is another, like, I don't know, another state or province from Spain. And there were Jewish communities basically in Cordova, Andalusia, now in Catalonia. And look what happens here in this reference that I thought it was interesting. The Jews that were in Catalonia, it says, historians affirm that Jews arrived in the Iberian Peninsula before the destruction of the Second Temple. Although as regards archaeological remains, all these buried gravestones they have been found, which testify the existence of Jewish communities, date for the 3rd century. So now we have 3rd century AD, and also before the destruction of the Second Temple. And it says the term is Aspamia. Remember, we read that from the other published book. Derives from the name Hispania. Okay, we read that divided in 4 different four different sections. It refers to the Iberian Peninsula in Roman times, and this is the this is actually the 3rd century BC. At the beginning of the 5th century, the Roman condemnation of the peninsula fell by the Visigoths. So after, obviously, the Carthaginian wars, the Romans fought the Carthaginian and Punic wars. Yeah, the Romans were able to occupy the Iberian Peninsula up until the Visigoths were able to conquer that part of the Iberian Peninsula. And we're talking about, right after, like around 5th century AD, right? That's when there was not longer Roman occupation, no more Roman control. During the Visigoth period, numerous decrees were issued against the Jews, and sometimes they were forced to convert into Christianity or expelled. And I will share that with you guys a little more. And it has to do with the Visigoths trying to convert us, becoming Christians. It happened in the 40 AD, 70 AD, and then Rome, when we're in Rome, they're trying to do that, and then the Visigoths basically we're trying to do that as well. Who are the Visigoths? Visigoths are basically Germanic people, also called Ostrogoths. Okay, it's more like they call it the Aryan people. There's not to be confused with Aryan people from India, but I would say as people they're Scandinavians, Vikings, and Germanic tribes. Those are the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths. Okay. Now, numerous decrees were given to the Jews, and sometimes they were forced to convert or to be expelled. Now, the Christian kingdom progressively conquered the old Islamic territories. So the Visigoths were stopped. They stopped really trying to convert us until the Muslims began to conquer the Iberian Peninsula. So that's what we call the golden age of Sephardic Jews. That's when we start flourishing with no expulsions, or discriminations, or to be treated like a third class citizen. And that's what's happening in 711 CE by the Islamic conquest of the Moorish when they arrived in Europe. Okay, the Berbers and the Muslims conquest. So look what it says. The Christian kingdom progressively conquered all Islamic territories. from the north to the south. With the Christian Reconquista, the territories occupied by the kingdoms of Castile and Portugal were also called by the Jews Sepharad. See, now it's giving us the time, but even the people from Catalonia, right? They live there. We were known as people from Sepharad. Well, Catalonia on the other kingdoms, on the other were called Edom, or named after Esau. So, for some reason, there were also people from Esau, I guess, because there were people the Roman Empire was occupying there. Okay, so it's called the Dumians. There were a lot of Dumians. They also occupied Spain. But, you know, Scipio, Africanus, you know, he's the one who, and Vespasian also, who were in charge of really expanding the Roman Empire there. Okay, it's interesting, but that's kind of like what it says. Jews often moved from Sepharad, the Muslim zone, to the northern lines of the Christian kingdoms and vice versa. So sometimes, depending on the pressure, we were able to blend in. Okay, so it says, in this early period, the Jewish scholars of Catalonia sought advanced Talmudic study, used to go to study the Talmudic academies or yeshivot in the south. Also, those who wanted to study science and linguistics went to Sepharad. So it was like the Mecca of this Jewish, you know, higher learning, you know, and because there were a lot of philosophers, poets, you know, translators, people also working in government positions. So we were the buffers between the Muslims and Christians. For some reason, you know, we're able to blend in, and we survived that way. You know, we still have to follow, you know, the Islamic law in order to survive, just like we did in Saudi Arabia and all these Arabic countries. Now, you know, if you want a reference here, we got the Rabbi Menachem Basaruk. You know, he gives a Spanish philosopher in the 10th century who gives some sort of a reference on that, right? And so I also, let me see, go back here. And then we got another one here. The first group of exiled Jews in Catalonia came out of the wake of 1391 attacks. So we always had, for some reason, resistance from other people trying to expel us from parts of the land of the Iberian Peninsula. So we survived in the Iberian Peninsula for a while until the 1492, expulsion. Now, what I'd like to share is the Tarshish, right? Because we're talking about Tarshish. I should post to show you the white Tarshish. Tarshish were the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, and it says Tarshish was said to be exported vast quantities of imported metals to Phoenicia. So it's, that's this is in Sardinia, right? Remember we're talking about the war Sepharad because of the Phoenicians. Israel had Jewish communities in Sardis because the Phoenicians had control of that area. Its precise location was never commonly known. It was eventually lost in antiquity. Legends grew up around and over time, so its identity has been subject to scholarly research and commentary for more than 2,000 years. Now, we're talking about here the Tarshish, right? The place of Tarshish, or the people of Tarshish. The name place common is the Akkadian inscriptions of the Assyrian king 669 BC. So when you see the time, 669 BC, before Christ, goes back to that time. And it's talking about Sardinia or Sardis. The island Sardinia related to the area that the Carthaginians, the Phoenicians had control. All right, so it is important. Its importance stands part of the fact that Hebrew biblical passages tend to understand Tarshish as a source of the King Solomon's great wealth in metals, especially silver, but gold and iron. So Ezekiel 6:27. The metals were reportedly obtained in partnership with the King Hiram of Phoenicia or Tyre, which is Lebanon, and mentioned in Isaiah 23, and fleets of ships from Tarshish. However, Solomon's temple to help to build the Solomon's temple, first temple, while destroyed by the Babylonians, making archaeological evidence difficult to uncover. So now we have that, according to this historical event of the Tarshish, they helped by Solomon to bring all this material from where? From Lebanon, from the Ivarian Peninsula, because the Ivarian Peninsula was well known for gold, silver, and minerals. You can do a little more research on that. So the people of Tarshish, or the place of Tarshish, both connections are actually very important to us, because from there we have King Solomon also having this relationship where he sent actually the northern tribes, some of the people from Samaria. Okay. Now here it continues and says the controversy. The existence of Tarshish in the Western Mediterranean, along with the Phoenician presence in the Western Mediterranean before what? ABC. So before, that was 800 years BC, right after, just around Solomon's time, right? Because Solomon's time was about 900 BC. So it's about 100 years later after King Solomon died. He died around 922 BCE, around there. And it has been questioned by some scholars in modern times because there is no direct evidence. Instead, the lack of evidence of wealth in Israel and Phoenicia during the reigns of Solomon and Hiram, respectively, prompted a few scholars to opine that the archaeological period of Mediterranean history between 1200 and ABC was a dark age. So they were saying that it's not really, for some reason there's a Bible scholar opinion about that they don't have exact evidence of how long the Phoenicians were in the Iberian Peninsula in traveling back and forth to the Iberian Peninsula in Lebanon, which is basically Phoenicia. But it says in the Septuagint and the Vulgate and the Targum, there's a reference just like the one we read from the Polish book of the University of Oxford University. It says, Jonathan rendered Tarshish as Carthage, right? That's the Carthaginians. It's Carthaginian civilization in Tunis or Tunisia, okay? And that's also the Iberian Peninsula. It says ancient Mediterranean is one of the most affluent cities. So it's very, very affluent cities. That means that's the reason why there was a lot of commerce, a lot of trading and so forth. But other biblical commentaries as early as 1646, it reads as the Tartessos, referring to what? It's a harbor city surrounding a culture on the south coast of the Iberian Peninsula. So that's another name where the name Tarshish comes from, because it was a big coast harbor where they're doing a lot of trading back and forth from all the Mediterranean to the east and to the west. Okay, if you do more research on that, you will see in ancient Hispania, the Iberian Peninsula, right? The Jewish Portuguese scholar politician also made another commentary. He says describe as Tarshish as the city known early times as the Carthage or Cartagena, in today called Tunisia. Okay, and then we have this references referring to Tarshish, right? And then we got biblical references here, right? We got the, for example, 1 Kings chapter 10, 22. It says, no, King Solomon had a fleet of ships of Tarshish at sea with the fleet of his ally King Hiram. So we have this biblical reference, not only the secular, that we have, but we have this connection, right? And once every 3 years, the fleet of the ships of Tarshish used to come bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. And it's also mentioned in 2 Chronicles 9:21, 1 Kings 22:48, which Jehoshaphat made ships to Tarshish to what? So there were a lot of minerals. If you look at the name Tartessos, what do you call the name? Looking past this. The name that was given here, Tartessos or Tartessos, it was known by the minerals. It was a trading coast of the Iberian Peninsula. So there was a lot of that. It's almost like nowadays petroleum, right? People go where there's a lot of petroleum, you have all these ships coming back and forth with bringing petroleum. Back then, it was more like minerals. So we have a lot of biblical, biblical references. We got Psalm 72, where it says, often interpreted Messianic and Jewish Christian tradition. Let me see here. I'm talking about Tarshish. It says, consisting of mountains of hills, rain and shower seas, and river leads up to the phrase Tarshish and islands, indicated that Tarshish were a large land Okay, so that means another plane, right? And yeah, it's the Ivarian Peninsula. It's considered like some sort of the Ivarian Peninsula. There's an island, you know, close to it. Okay, so anyway, so there's a lot of here. We got also Isaiah. Okay, another biblical reference about this. He's talking about a harbor. If you notice right here, it says, a well or ships of Tarshish, Tyre is laid wasted without cause of harbor. So what's a harbor? You know, cross over the Tarshish, inhabitants of the coast. So there was a coast in the Ivarian Peninsula. So there's a lot of biblical connections here. Okay, coastlines. It's considered a part of the coastlines. All right. So now we got Jeremiah also mentioned it, where they brought souls of silver. Look, Tarshish is passing a source of silver, and beaten silver brought from Tarshish, and gold from Uphaz. There's a lot of, I didn't know this has a lot of references here. Ezekiel contains also mentioned the Tarshish, where he says, Tarshish did business with you because your great wealth of every kind, silver, iron, tin. Yeah, that makes sense. So we have a lot of biblical connections with this Iberian Peninsula, that is also called, you know, Tarshish. Coming from the Phoenicians, which is their original place, which is Lebanon, all the way to Carthaginian, who had the control in the Iberian Peninsula, as we read it. Those are the connections. Okay, so I just want to give you this reference because Sephardic people have a very ancient origin and history, and every place we've been, we're being actually expelled. And I'm going to show you something here real quick so you understand this in the better perspective. Let me see if I can find it. I have it here, so let me see here. Oh, here it is. Expulsion and exodus of the Jews, right? And this is the Sephardic Jews. I kind of highlighted some important things, right? Here starts Jewish expulsion events prompted significant streams of Jewish refugees. Yeah. So as refugees, we have to find other Jewish communities to survive. And as I mentioned earlier, because we in the Islamic places, they allow us to be able to live or to be able to coexist with them. And Christians as well, but they're treated as more like a third-class citizens, to the point that until they said, okay, you need to convert or you need to be expelled. And there were a lot of Jews that left houses, lands, possession, businesses, and they were stripped by whatever they had. So starting here, 73 BCE, right, we have the Samaria, which is basically when the deportation of the Jews, right, the first one, and to go into the Syrians, talking about the Syrian exile or the Syrian captivity, right here in 22 BC to the 733 BC. And then from 97 BC, when the Babylonian captivity started, right, around 536 BC by the Persians. And then 2 years later, allowed Jews to return and rebuild Jerusalem. And that was actually about the house of Judah, as if you remember the biblical account. They were, the house of Judah were allowed to come back to Jerusalem. And not just the house of Judah, was the southern tribes. That was Benjamin, part of the Manasseh, part of the Ephraim, and Levites. Okay, they were part of the southern tribes to be able to be in Judea to build a temple. As you already know, the king of Persia is the one who helped us out to build that temple, right? And then all of a sudden, in 475, Haman plots to expel the Jews, right? Remember that with Ezra? I think it's Ezra, where once again, here it is Esther, right? The book of Esther, not Ezra. And that's when we know that we had to stay there because of one person really wanted us to be killed, and kind of backfired at Haman. And he died, and all his family and so forth. We survived, you know, by having some sort of a woman, Esther, who was pleased by the king, and saw the honesty and the hardworking people that we contributed to his kingdom. That's pretty much it. And then we have 130 BC. I highlighted it because we went over this. It's expulsion of the city of Rome under the accusation of aggressive proselyte. There was a the accusation was that the Jews were proselytizing Gentiles, right, among the Romans. And the Romans didn't like that because obviously they have their own religion. And that was huge. Remember Scipio Africanus and Vespasian and some other emperors before, after Scipio Africanus are. So there was a huge expulsion a couple of times from Rome. In 19 CE, right, we have also the expulsion of the Emperor Tiberius just before, right after, actually, obviously we know, just before the Messiah showed up in 30 AD, right? 4153 CE, Claudius' expulsion of the Jews. I think we saw that. Okay, that's one other one. And then we have 70 CE, which is the first Jewish war, right? That's when they destroyed Jerusalem. Many were actually expelled. Not expelled, they were taken in captivity to Rome. A lot of Jews went directly taken to Rome, right? And many died. Probably they said about 2 million, and the siege of Jerusalem, about 2 million died. So there's a lot of people. And then we have the Keto Wars against Rome, 119 CE, which is called the Jewish Wars. And then all the way to 33-5, that's how many wars we had between 70 AD to 135. And then I think that's when Rome named Jerusalem Palestina, and Jews were forbade to set foot in Jerusalem. So that's what the Arabs took place, basically 136. And Jews were expelled and prohibited, but I'm sure there were some people married to Muslims. In America, they were able to kind of coexist. I'm not going to go through every expulsion, but I was able to just show something here. 418 AD, we have the expulsion from Minorca, Spain. So 1492, it was not the first one most people might think. We had the Minorca either asked to convert. That's what the Visigoths, remember the Visigoths were between 330. And the reason why the Visigoths are trying to convert us or expel is because Brittany at that time didn't believe, they believed what's called Arianism. They believed that Jesus was not God, okay, quote unquote. So Rome had some sort of a resistance trying to convert everybody into Christianity in the Western European lands. So the Britons, right, are the ones that were able to coexist with them because they were not too close with the Roman Empire because they believed Arianism. So they were Arian, and they follow Arianism, which is basically Christianity. They were not on the same page with Christianity. So, but the Visigoths, on the other hand, right? So we got the Britons and the Visigoths, two different kind of cultures. Okay, so then the Visigoths basically had control of the Ivarian Peninsula in Germania, and that's when they tried to convert us. 612, Visigoth and a king mandated every Jew who not refused over a year to have himself or his children and servant baptized will be banished from the country and deprived from this possession. So you understand here, this is the Jews from where? Iberian Peninsula. And this gives basically a timeline of Sephardic Jews in the Iberian Peninsula. Because if you notice right here, Alexander, and 418, that's when Jews were still in Spain. That's Minorca. Here, Minorca, that's in Spain. So people that know it, Minorca is one of the political islands located in the Mediterranean Sea belong to Spain. Maybe that's the island that was talking about Tarshish, remember? And so there it is, the proof that Sephardic Jews been being around for a long time. And we are actually the people of the book. In Spain, you may do more research, we are called the people of the book, Bible, in Spain. Now, here we have another rebellion. Well, okay, so in 612, right, we were heavily persecuted by the Visigoths until the 7th century. You might know why, because of Berbers and Muslim Islamic control in the Iberian Peninsula, okay? And it says Muhammad also expelled during that time by the dynasty or Umayyad dynasty. there were different dynasties, Islamic dynasties, but when the Umayyad dynasty came into control of the Iberian Peninsula and it started really trying to also make people, well, they were trying to also have that as an Islamic control. Okay, so it says, Muhammad expelled Jewish tribes from Banu. There were actually three main Jewish tribes in with Arabic Peninsula. Okay, leaving the 7th century Medina, Saudi Arabia, the great father Banu tribe. Okay, and then we have Banu Nadir, another Jewish community in Arabia and the Saudi Arabia Peninsula in Medina. So there were a lot of Jews in the Saudi Arabia Peninsula until Muhammad came. He was a military leader and expelled us all, trying to also kill us. And many of those who were in Saudi Arabia, they moved or they fled to the Jewish communities. Many of those, they were actually moved to Spain. We got this one too, Banu, Jewish tribe from the northern Arabia. You can read there yourself. It says, at the oasis until the 7th century, when men were sentenced to death and women and children enslaved after betraying the pact made with Muslims following the invasion of Banu by Muslim forces. So the Banu tribe was slaughtered in the Jewish settlement of Khaybar, fought in a year between Muslims and the Jews living in the oasis Khaybar. So there was war also with the Muslims at one time. When Muhammad was coming, it was rising for power. Look at this. So, okay, so the 7-11, right? That's when it was called the Golden Age. Well, I'm not sure what extraordinary things happened. What I mean is that there were a lot of freedom. There were a lot of progression in Spain. Spain was flourishing at that time. But because we're able to coexist with Muslims and Christians, and we were the negotiators between Muslims and Christians at that time. Okay, and so that was something that we were able to have at least 700 years of some sort of a peace or tranquility, if you would. Not needless to say, right? The 7th century Muhammad and the other end of the world, Saudi Arabia, were slaughtering Jews, right? But on the other end, we were having freedom. So if you are a Jew in the Saudi Arabia, where they're slaughtering people, and there's a Jewish community in Iberia, wouldn't you try to move to Iberia? Of course you will. Okay, so now we have from 112 Jews expelled from Mainz, the largest city in Germany. I didn't know that. There was one of the city located around, influenced with my main. So there we were expelled. So you're thinking Hitler only expelled us from 1914, 1938? No, there was also another expulsion, 1012. And probably, once again, they moved to the Iberian Peninsula, Spain. At that time, those Jewish community were okay because we're under the Islamic control, right? Now, in 1095 and 13th century, right, we're still actually striving in the Iberian Peninsula. Why? Even though there was a lot of the war of the Muslims and the Crusaders, right? Look what it says. Even though that was happening, we're still okay. Now, the waves of the Crusade destroyed many Jewish communities in Europe, mostly in apparently Rhineland, which is in Germany, in the Middle East. For some reason, didn't happen in Spain because they were the Muslims. Think about that. Most notably in Jerusalem. Yep, that's when there was the war between Muslims and Christians, right, trying to take over Jerusalem. But from 711 all the way to 900, apparently there's another Bible scholar saying that 900 was really the golden age, but other Bible scholars said 711 golden age. But it doesn't matter. There was 700 years, right, until the 1492 that we were able to have some sort of peace and freedom and contribute to society in Spain. And if you look more into that, you will see that we really contribute a lot to society. And there were a lot of Sephardic Jews. There were philosophers, physicians, translators, and they were in the military and the government. And so we that's another thing. I think we try to educate ourselves so we can become an asset to our adverse people that don't like us, right? Or government that want to convert them to Christianity. And when I say government, I mean like Christian countries. um, so they see that we offer something. We can bring something to the table. So that was another way to survival. People think that we have a higher education for no reason. No, it's because that way we can survive. All right, so after that, what happened? The Sephardic Jews, mid-20th century, right? We have the golden age Jewish culture in Spain, and which basically is called the Middle Ages in Europe. The Muslim rule during that was really, we were getting along with the Jews, I mean with the Muslims. So we were generally accepted in society, and Jewish religious culture and economic lives to flourish. So that time is still good, right? And then we got among other refugees like who also fled because it still there was a little there were some we call Muslim fanatics, so extremist Islamic groups. They were still kind of kill some Jews, right? But they were just extreme groups, like now we have Al Qaeda and some ISIS groups like that also existed back then, and they did some slaughter too. A lot of Jewish communities. So that's when we see this guy over here was called Maimonides, right? He was a Jewish philosopher, a secular Jewish philosopher, also called Ramban, very well known Sephardic Jew philosopher, right? During that time, he was communicating with all the Jewish communities in Morocco, Egypt, and Israel. And so, we try to always help each other, even though some Jews are secular Jews. We're still part of the community. All right, so in 1276, Jews were expelled in Bavaria, Germany. Right, I'm sure they went to Israel, Iberian Peninsula, Spain. In 12th, 14th centuries, also France. Look what they did. They practiced expelling the Jews, accompanied by confiscation of their property, followed by temporary readmissions, but for ransom. So, wow, you can read all these references. 12th and 4th century. So now we see those people leaving Germany, England. I don't know, we got France. They went to Spain because Spain still was a good place to live. So as you can see, we're being expelled from Rome, Jerusalem. 13th century, we got also another expulsion going on called the expulsion of the Jews who would refuse to convert to Christianity. Some scholars refers to the first comprehensive articulation of the Christian West or expulsionist policy regarding Jews. And this happened where? In France. So it was here between 12th century to 14th century. So the Jews and Sephardic Jews in Spain, they suffer a lot. You know what I mean? I'm sure that if they suffer persecution, then France is not that far from Spain. But because they had a lot of properties, a lot of possessions, they didn't want to leave until they were forced to leave. That's what happened. Either they're forced to convert and they want to convert, they lost everything, they have to move at that point, or flee to some other place. Imagine you working 30, 40 years, man. You buy your home and you have a business, and all of a sudden the government says, or the Christian monarch says, you convert or die or leave, one of those things, you know what I mean? So that's very tough. Once again, around that time, we see the King of England trying another expulsion, 1290. All of the Jews from England being, after 365 years in the making, I guess, King Edward of England, 1290 AD, does an edict of expulsion of the Jews. It says it was a royal decree issued by King Edward of England, July 1290, expelling Jews from the Kingdom of England. Well, England is but not too far from Galicia, Spain, so that's when a lot of Galicians, or they call it Gallegos, Spanish Jews, they went there because it's very close. But once again, you're not gonna leave your property, your business, and your livelihood unless you're really forced to, unless they take it away from you and you're forced to die, you convert. That's what the point where you have to kind of, a lot of Jews have to make a decision, right? 1293, destruction of most Jewish communities in the kingdom of Naples, which is Spain. Now, once again, the Jewish people in Rome. Wow. And then all the people from Hungary, right? 1316, so we're expelled from Hungary. Switzerland, people were expelled. During 1394, it's getting close to the 1492 expulsion, but all those Jewish communities, they were in the Balkans, right? Those are the Balkans, like Hungary. There were Jewish communities in the Balkans. That was after the Roman expulsion of the Jews. A lot went to the Balkans. And, you know, and they built these Jewish communities there. A lot of Romani Jews, right? And then after that, they were expelled. They went to Spain or maybe to Egypt or whatever is a Jewish community. They were safe to live. And then we got Austria, right? We get Germany again, 1442. Wow. And then we got Passau, which is Germany, another expulsion. Ravenna, where is that? That's in Western Roman Empire, Ravenna. Ostrogoth Kingdom, I guess, and the Byzantine Empire. Then we have, it says Charles occupies on this 1495 against another persecution against the Jews, many of them who were refugees from Spain. So basically, in 1492, right, we get this Alhambra decree. Check this out. After the 1491 Ravenna, right? Ravenna is where in the Ostrogothic Kingdom, okay, 540. All right, so now we have this in Italy. Ravenna is in Italy. In 1492, when the monarchs of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella, Alhambra decree, makes this huge expulsion of the Jews, right? 250 Jews, 1,000 Jews converted to Christianity, guys. Because they didn't want to leave their positions, and there was so much livelihood. So they became what's called conversos, Marranos. And probably a few thousand were the ones they were actually fled to Morocco, Egypt, India. They went to Turkey, which is a huge community in Turkey, just like First Peter 1:1 says. Then we have here they try to go back to Rome, and they didn't want them there. They want to try to go back to France. They don't want them there. So I was like, okay, so you know what I mean? And so many were to the Balkans. There were some Jewish communities in the Balkans, but except for Hungary, because there's some other Balkan countries there that were not allowing the Jews. And then over here, you can see 1495, right? Charles VIII of France didn't allow the Jews there too. After the 1492, they were Christians, Christian countries. 1496, we have this huge one, from Portugal expelled from the Jews, right? Another decree. And they had to also flee to other countries, to other Jewish communities. And then we got 1499, and then you can see more. And then we got 1526 in Hungary by the Roman, it says Jews expelled in the wake of the defeat of the Kingdom of Hungary by the Ottoman Empire. So when the Ottoman Empire conquered Hungary, 1526, apparently Jews were kicked out as well, right? So we went through a lot, guys. And now already many Jews expelled from the Dutch of Bavaria. Jewish community in Bavaria ceased until the end of the 17th century. Well, a small community was founded by refugees from Vienna. All right, so we go all the way to present time. We got all the expulsions and persecution of the Jews. There were Jews expelled from Haiti, the French colonies, right, in 1683. So basically, what happened is that this is what happened. There were people there after the 1492. They were conversos, okay? They were Marranos. They could convert to Christianity, but somehow, when you say crypto Jews, they were crypto Jews. They practiced Christianity in public, but they practiced Judaism behind doors. For some reason, they were spotted, and that's why they were expelled from there. Some of them actually murdered. So I want you to know that. So not every Jew staying in Latin America, they were conversos. Some would die, and somebody, because they're called crypto Jews, because they practice Judaism behind doors and practice Christianity in the public places. So that's what Haiti people, in Haiti, that's what happened. In 1700, also the same thing. 1701, we got a war. Jews of Austrian origin were expelled from Bavaria, Germany, right? And then we moved, and then we got all the way to 1862 in the United States. We have basically Jews expelled by this guy, politician, right? 1862, were expelled from America too as well. They were expelled, people, okay, so let's put it this way. Sephardic Jews that were under the Judaism shelter, I would call it shelter, but umbrella, they were not allowed to enter in Latin American countries at all, because there was all these expulsions, right? So now only the Anusim, the one that were forced to convert to Christianity, were able to enter, but they were still persecuted and murdered because they were practicing Judaism behind doors. So here, if you notice here now, also 1880, the Russian, back in the day, the Russian Empire expelled 2.5 million Jews. They immigrated to Eastern Europe, from Eastern Europe. Well, actually, they moved to Russia. The Balkan Jews, I guess, from Eastern Europe. And they obviously, you already know what happened in 1933 to 1957. That was another Holocaust. That's a big Holocaust. There were a lot of slaughter of Jewish communities, Sephardic Jews. By then, by this 1800, we have also what's called the Ashkenazi Jews. They were actually converts from the 800 AD. Okay, those are, I'm going to share with you, I don't know how long we've been talking about. By the time the video is over, you will understand who we are. As an ethnic group, culture, not as, Israel was not a religion before. Israel became later because we're allowing people that were not from Sephardic Jews or Israelite or descendant. They were converted into Judaism, and that's why we see a lot of people that come from all parts, all walks of life, and they were welcome. All we wanted, to be honest with you, is just to practice Torah, follow the commandments of God, and understand the Abrahamic faith. Obviously, Christianity has been the one that's always been the one persecuting us, trying to convert us by force, and thank God, we always we didn't give up on our Abrahamic faith. I will make another video about that, but right now I'm concentrating giving you guys the history, explain as much as I can. I'm not a PhD, I don't have a PhD degree on history, but you don't need a PhD degree in history nowadays. Thanks to the internet, you have the access to information, as I've been showing you, with your fingertips, to be able to access any document you want. You can access any library you want as well, encyclopedia you want. But the point is be able to interpret and understand the historical information you are reading. In my case, of my Sephardic background, I totally understand because I grew up on that, little by little learning. I grew up in a more like a secular Sephardic family until I was growing up, as a kid. I got into it and learned more about it, so going to probably synagogues and learning the Jewish perspective, and then I went solo to understand the Christian perspective, and meaning that I study independently just to know more about the history of Christianity. But once again, using the internet, using the resources. Now, here, if you notice, in 1862, the Jews were expelled from America, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Kentucky. And those are the Jews that probably were kicked out from all this expulsion that you can see. Now, after the Holocaust, look what happens here. Jews exodus from Arab countries. This is important. This is the biggest thing that we highlight. Oh my gosh. 1947, 1972, every Jewish community in the world, the country decided to send people, because 1948, the state of Israel became established, right? So we got Jews from Egypt. They were actually expelled, but it's expelled in the sense that they were actually exodus. because now they were sent to Israel. So now the people of the book, right, the Sephardic Jews and the Mizraim Jewish community, everybody else that belongs to Israel and who identify themselves with us. Now, 1947, 1972, it's important because it is something that is biblical, and I will show it to you right now. Let's go to the Bible, and we're going to go Isaiah 11:11. Look what it says here. And the Isaiah 11:11 prophecy about us, it was fulfilled like word for word. Look what it says. On that day, the Lord will extend his hand a second time to recover the remnant of his people who survived. Because there were so many expulsions, so many persecutions, so many slaughter. And it says, from where? From Assyria, Egypt. Egypt is basically all this land of the Mediterranean. Petros, which is part of Egypt. Cush, which is Ethiopia. Elam, which is Iran. Shinar, which is Iraq. Hamat, which is Lebanon. In the coast and islands of the west. All the Ivarian Peninsula, England, and everything. Sardis, the island of Sardis, the island of Sardinia, Sicily, you name it. We were everywhere in the coastlines of the Mediterranean. This is a very prophetic thing, because the Lord says that he will extend his hand second time. The first time was done in Egypt. Second time was all this 2,000 years. Yeah, I just gave you a timeline of the Sephardim. Okay. Now, 11:12 says, he will lift out a banner for the nations and gathered what? The dispersed of Israel, and he will collect the scattered Judah from the four corners of the earth. So now, exactly this is happening since 1948. Okay, so the Father has been gathering his people, because his people have been like wandering all over the world, being persecuted, being despised. Now we have a homeland, Israel, and every biblical prophet is being fulfilled. Okay, let me go back here. Okay, I was gonna go back to what I was want to show you something important, but as far as the timeline. Give me 1 second, Aaron. Discovering this thing. Okay, so give me 1 second. I'll find it. Oh, here it is. So this year was 1947, 1970. It's very important because all the Jewish communities, the ones that want to stay in where they are, they can stay. But a lot of people, they did the Exodus. Remember, it's called the Exodus because on Isaiah 11:11 is another second Exodus for us to come back to Israel. That's a prophecy, guys. And for those Sephardic Jews, right, they understand this. I don't know if they understand prophetically, but I do. And it gives you here the approximate how many millions of Jews were gathered. We have about maybe 5 or 6 million right now in Israel. And I think it's 60% of that that community is 60%, I think, is Sephardim. Sephardic Jews is a big chunk, and along with Mizraim. And then I think it's about 30 or 40% also Ashkenazi Jews. And the rest of it got about 70% that are non-Jews that live in Israel. So that's basically the nation of Israel, right? Prophetically speaking. And then we have here, right? There in 1947, Egypt passed the company laws. Look what it says here. The law requires that no less than 75% of employees of the company in Egypt must be Egyptian citizens. The law strongly affected Jews, as only about 20% of all Jews in Egypt were Egyptian citizens. The rest, although there were many cases of born in Egypt and living there for generations, did not hold Egyptian citizenship. Imagine that. That's why there was an exodus and from Arab Muslim countries. And Muslims actually were like Mizraim. I want to share that about Mizraim and Sephardim relationship, okay? We do have a very close relationship. The Mizraim are Jews from Babylon, Syria, Baghdadis, Persian, Afghanistan, and Babylonians. and all the way from North Africa, Morocco, Tunisia, one of those. And then we intermingle a lot with Sephardim. Sephardim intermarry a lot of Mizraim, so there was basically, you know, that intermarriage, having this community, being part of the Jewish community. And later, I'm gonna share something with you about this. Okay, so I understand more about our communities. So obviously, it gives you all the history, guys, until now. But I want to just, I think that's enough. Just want to give you an overview of a timeline of Sephardim, Sephardic Jews. But now I'm going to show you the relationship that we have with Mizraim. Here. Give me 1 second here, dude. Oh, here it is. All right. Mizrahi Jews in Israel, in Sephardim. Mizrahi Jews are descended from Jews in the Middle East, Central Asia. Okay, Central Asia is not China, okay? Most people think it's China, but it's in the west of China, which is Afghanistan, Iran, and South Russia. In the regions consist of former Union Republics of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and of Uzbekistan. So those are the Central Asian, the Mizraim, okay? Don't think that they're all Ethiopians, no. The Ethiopian community started in like 700 AD, but because there were actually a Jewish community there, as you remember of Benjamin Tudela, like 1100, like there was already a Jewish community. But we as Sephardim, because we built a lot of Jewish communities virtually everywhere in the world, in Latin America, Europe, Asia, which I'm talking about Turkey and these areas. So we built communities there. We got the Igbos, and the Igbos, the community was built up because of the Ethiopians, okay? They're a Jewish community, the Igbos, because of the Ethiopians, the Ethiopian Jews. But the Mizraim also kind of intermingled with the Ethiopians, okay? Because a lot of them were Geminites from Yemen, okay, and Ethiopians, and we got Babylonians heritage, right, of the Mizraim. It says the history of Jews in Iraq is documented from the time of Babylonian captivity, 586 BC. Iraqi Jews constitute one of the world's oldest and most historical significant Jewish communities. So I don't want to forget this because this is huge. As far as Sephardim and Mizraim, we were like this. We always kind of intermingle, intermarry. So let's read this. It says, who had lived many generations under Muslim rules. So most of these Mizraim live in Saudi Arabia. I think I showed you about Muhammad when they kicked out all those people from Saudi Arabia. Those are actually were Mizraim Jews, or Mizraim, right, can live in the Middle East, in North Africa, since antiquity, okay, in the 7th century. And if you look at them, you know, they look very different as far as they look like Iraqi, Afghanistan, Arabic as well, and you know, so they have a different unique look. And then because many of them intermarry with Sephardim, you know, but if you go to Israel, you will see a lot of Mizraim as well. Okay, so some 607,900 Jews are immigrants of first generation descendants of paternal lineage of Iraqi, Iranian, Gemini, Egyptian, Pakistani. Why Pakistani? Because in India, there's a huge Jewish community for a long time. Many of 1492 expulsion of the Jews, they went Sephardim, they went to the Baghdadis or Mizraim Jewish communities there. In Indian Jewish communities, traditionally associated with the Mizrahi Jews, exactly, that's kind of repeating myself. Many more Israeli Jews are second to third generation Mizrahi descendants or have partial Mizraim origin. This is the part that was I'm talking about. And it says, the other dominant subgroups are Israeli Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews, right? But if you notice right here, the Ashkenazi Jews are the ones that converted around ABC, right? Now, often Mizrahi and North African Sephardic Jews in Israel are grouped together due to the similarity of their history under Muslim rule and overwhelming migration out of their countries of residence during the 20th centuries. As of 2005, 61% of Israeli Jews were full or partial Mizrahi ancestry. So that's the connection that we have since the Babylonian exiles, okay? And I had a theory, it's like the Babylonian Jews were the northern tribes because it says that it's born from Babylon, okay? That means the 10 tribes of Israel went to Babylon. The southern are the Sephardic, the house of Judah. And I don't say it. I showed you a reference where it shows that, this house of the royal house of Judah from Jerusalem were taken captives by Vespasian, the emperor of Rome. And Josephus is the one who recommended, hey, when do you send them to Rome? We send them to, the Ivarian Peninsula, because they were going to be murdered. That's when I said that Josephus was kind of negotiated, so he could save some lives, Jewish lives, which he did. Now, I'm going to read more. What is the relationship we have with, look, Ashkenazim for us is a family. We're all a family. Do we have a little differences? Yes, we do. But we are a family, okay? And we do practice Torah. We observe Torah, the Hebrew feasts, which are the most important part, okay? Do they have different doors? Yeah, different customs in the sense that, they speak Yiddish, right? The Ashkenazi speak Yiddish, we don't. So there's different things, okay? Because depending on the country they live in, It says, after the establishment of the State of Israel, subsequent 1948 Arab-Israeli war, right, most Mizrahi Jews were either expelled by their Arab rulers or to choose to leave and to immigrate Israel. According to 2009 Statistical Abstract of Israel, 50.2% of Israeli Jews are of Mizrahi or Sephardic origin. So we are very closely connected with Mizrahi. Anti-Jews, so here it says, according to the 25,000 Mizrahi Jews from Egypt left after 1956 crisis, that's when 1957, I think, were expelled by Egypt, led to an overwhelming majority of Mizrahi leaving home countries like Egypt. And they became refugees and most went to Israel. Today, as many 40,000 Mizrahi will still remain in communities scattered throughout the non-Arab Muslim world, primarily Iran, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. Those kind of remember me, kind of like what James 1:1 says, and 1 Peter 1:1, and I think the Revelation talk about those two, right? Those in Asia. So I'm gonna come to believe that the Mizraim were actually the northern tribes. Now, we continue reading. It says, the Mizraim immigrants and refugees were placed in rudimentary and hastily erected tent cities. So they were not welcome that well in Israel because, for some reason, I'm going to read it so you can interpret that information. It says, often in development towns and other peripheries of Israel, settlement in Moshavim, cooperative farming villages, was only partially successful because Mizraim had a historically filled niche as craftsmen and merchants, and most did not traditionally engage in farm work. So they were merchants and craftsmen. That's why fitting in with Israeli society was a little hard. Okay, so and then it says here, as the majority left their property behind in their home countries, Arab countries, as they journeyed to Israel, many suffered a severe decrease in their socioeconomic status, aggravated by their cultural and political differences within the dominant Ashkenazi community. So the Ashkenazi community didn't get along with the Mizraim, I guess, because didn't fit with Israeli society. Furthermore, a policy of austerity was enforced at that time due to economic hardship for the Mizraim Baghdadi. This is a picture of Baghdadi Jews, but it looked like guys. Iraqi Jews, Then we got the Bukhari Jews. Let me see, I'm just trying to. Okay, so we got the Maranati Jews, one picture, Hindi Jews, one pictures. Okay, It says many, especially those from North Africa and Fertile Crescent, spoke Arabic dialects. For those from Iran, I spoke Persian. Mountain Jews from Azerbaijan arrived. Baghdadi Jews speak other languages, I guess. So it's not just Arabic. Various other languages with them. Hebrew had historically been a language only of prayer, and most Jews not living in Israel, including the Mizraim. So Sephardic Jews in Mizraim always spoke Hebrew and Aramaic. Okay, they call it the Babylonian Jews. The one that didn't like to speak Hebrew and Aramaic were the Hellenistic Jews from Syria, you know, from when Alexander the Great separated the four generals at that time. There were a lot of Hellenistic Jews after Alexander the Great conquest. So that's kind of like another difference, okay, the Hellenistic Jews and Babylonian Jews, which Babylonian Jews are actually Mizraim Jews and Sephardic Jews, kind of like combined. Then he says, the cultural differences between Mizrahi and Ashkenazi Jews, okay, impacted the degree and rate assimilation into Israeli society. And sometimes the divide between Eastern European and Middle Eastern Jews was quite sharp. Segregation, especially in the area of the housing, limited integration possibilities over the years. Intermarriage between Ashkenazi and Mizraim. So Mizraim Jews thought, okay, we're going to marry this kind of thing. Let's see what happens. Look what happens here. And it says, intermarriage between Ashkenazim and Mizraim is increasingly common in Israel. And by the late 1990s, 28% of Israeli children had multi-ethnic parents, up to 40% in the 1950s. It has been claimed that intermarriage does not tend to decrease ethnic differences in socioeconomic status. It's still the same, but it is what it is. And then, except it says, however, it doesn't apply to children of inter-ethnic marriages, I guess. I don't know what that means. But yeah, I mean, we being in, I think Mizraim and Ashkenazim and Sephardim will kind of being intermarried. I'm not saying 100%, but for the most part in Israel, because, you know, now they're all together. But the one that don't mix that much will be the ones outside of Israel. Now, Mizrahi Jews are less likely to pursue academic studies than Ashkenazi Jews or Sephardi Jews, right? Because they're more like they're into. I think they were defining they were merchants, and also they couldn't fit well in the Israeli society, right? Furthermore, the percentage of Mizraim who seek out university education remains low compared to second-generation immigrant groups of Ashkenazi origin. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Because I want you to get to know us. Who are the Sephardim? Who are the Mizraim and Ashkenazi? We all are one family. We love each other. Like brothers, you know, sometimes we kind of have our differences, but we do follow Torah. We really appreciate Torah, Hebrew scriptures. And we appreciate the fact that no matter what, you know, we stay loyal to our Abrahamic faith. And we always contribute to society. We strive to society. Education is part of who we are because that's how we survive. I don't think we're going to be negotiating between Christians and Muslims unless we have something to offer, something we have to bring to the table. You know what I mean? Okay, it said 1948. I think I covered that. Yes, I did. Okay, so now, give me 1 second. I think that's all I wanted to share with you guys. As far as the Golden Age in Spain is basically between the 700 to 11 time, right? Just want to share a little bit of our 700 years of really flourish, right? Where we really, I mean, we had, I would say, not only to, you know, more freedom, but we were able to coexist with the Muslims and Christians. Look what it says there. It says Jews were generally accepted in society in Jewish religious culture and economic life. Life flourished, right, in Spain. A few scholars give the start of the Golden Age between 711 and 718. Other scholars said between 912 during this guy's ruling, the Umayyad Emir, Umayyad from Cordoba, and ended in 1031. As you know, were persecuted at that time by the Caliphate of Cordoba, right? And then from other Granada, there was another massacre of Jewish people, right? That was a war. And anyway, so, but there was just incidents. And then obviously the Umayyad Caliphate were more, I think we coexisted better with them than some other caliphate. And then the coexistence of Muslims, Jews, and Christians during that time is revered by many writers. The Andalus was a key center of Jewish life during the early Middle Ages as the Sephardic. Andalus was the capital of the world Judaism. Yep. And so, let me see here. Generally, the Jewish people were allowed to practice their religion, right? Our Abrahamic faith. And remember, when I say Jewish people, that's in quotation because we have everyone who is a Jew, bloodline related Jew, and non-blood related, because they were able to we're able to share our Abrahamic faith with them. So when it says Jewish people, it refers to everybody. Okay. So it says live according to the laws and Jewish scriptures of their community. Furthermore, the restrictions to which they were subject were social and symbolic rather than tangible and practical in character. That is to say, these regulations serve to define the relationship between the two communities and not to oppress the Jewish population. So there was a lot of harmony, I guess, back then with the Christians and Muslims. And then prior to 598, the Golden Age, birth of the Golden Age, Jewish experience, that was basically the Aryan Visigoth occupiers in Spain. That was about 400 to 500, remember? That's the only time there was a lot of persecution. And it says, the Visigoths occupiers in Spain, right, were mainly indifferent towards Jews and allowed them to grow and prosper for a little bit. And then the Visigoths joined, when the Visigoths joined the Catholic Church, they placed ever greater economic burdens on the Jewish population and later persecuted them severely. It is possible that Jews welcomed to Muslim Arab, mainly Berber, conquerors of the 8th century because of that reason. North African Jewish immigrants and immigrants from the Middle East bolstered the Jewish population, and Muslims of Spain, probably the biggest center of contemporary Jews, especially after 912 during the reign of this dude right here, from the Umayyad of Cordoba. Okay, so a lot of Jewish philosophers, mathematicians, astronomers, poets, and rabbinical scholars composed highly rich culture and scientific work. Those are the Sephardic Jews in Spain. Okay, so that's what I was mentioning about the education part of it. Many devoted themselves to study of the sciences and philosophy, composing many of the most valuable texts, Jewish philosophy. In Spain, poetry and philosophy was huge, just like, you know, what happened with the Greeks, right, in Egypt and Greece. It was one of those things that there was valued so much at that time. You know, I think it was just the culture in that region. There was a lot of mathematicians, astronomers, a lot of science. And then this dude over here, right, Umayyad court physician, was also, you know, a welcome Jewish people to be part of his court, or the part of his ruling, right, or being part of the court, basically. And then there are some other good, interesting guys in, you got Judah Halevi, a very well-known in the Jewish community, a philosopher. We got this dude over here, Shalom and Gabriel, 11th century, and then Moses, this guy is the another philosopher, Moses ben Jacob. We got Maimonides, right? Maimonides, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Maimonides. We got obviously a lot of Jewish rabbis. Okay, so the Islamic world classified Jews and Christians as dhimmi. Dhimmi is the historical non-Muslim living in Islamic state of legal protection. The word dhimmi means protected person, referring to the state obligation of Sharia law to protect individuals' life, property, and freedom and religion in exchange for loyalty to the state of payment by the jizya tax or tribute to. So because of this, we're able to coexist with Islamic countries or Islamic ruling. They allow us to be ourselves. Comparing to the Christians, I'll be honest, we never had that chance. So I relate more to the Muslims, right, in that sense than Christians, because Christians now in the 21st century, Christians think that they don't know their history about the Christianity I decided to say that, but they don't know. I just share right now our history, in the one that persecuted the 100% was the Christians. You know, we were actually persecuted by some other, you know, Islamic ruling, but not 100%. Usually were by some extremist Islamic, you know, movement. Now we see here, this guy over here, that's 1135, that was Maimonides, right? That was the persecution but that was in Granada, that was the massacre in Granada by this Islamist Islamic caliphate, okay? And this is what, even if he was, Maimonides was a secular Jewish philosopher, look what he said to our Jewish community. So we always kind of stay together. We try to always, you know, be able to blend in with those Christians and the Muslims. Dear brother, because of our many sins, Hashem, so we call Hashem God, has cast us among this nation. Even he said that. Even this guy said this. This is important as Sephardic Jews. Dear brothers, there was 1135. Because of our many sins, Hashem, at 11, right, we go back to Torah, Hashem, God, has cast out among this nation, or scattered us, the Arabs, who are treating us badly, right, that was because of the Granada massacre. They passed laws designed to cause us distress and make us despise. Never has there been a nation that had hated it, humiliated, and loaded us as much as this one. Yep. I mean, Christians and Muslims for only for that particular time. The end of the Golden Age, right? And this is when a Muslim mob stormed to royal palace in Granada. They crucified Jewish people, massacred many Jewish population in the city, according to one source. As 1,500 Jewish families, numbered about 4,000 people, fell in one day. This was the first persecution they used in the Peninsula under Islamic rule. So that was about when? 1976, around there, I guess. No, 1066, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And beginning in 1090, the situation deteriorated further with the invasion of this. There was an Israeli Jew, and this guy was a military warrior. They worked with the Portuguese to help us out during that time, okay? Because it also happened in Portugal. And his name is Jaya. Jaya was a Mizraim Jew, but he was a military, part of the military who had favor with one of the Portuguese officials. And he helped to really fight this battle of Granada, okay, and with the Portugal and the Spanish. I will show you right now, but it's interesting. Jaya, that's his name. Jaya was a Mizraim, in Sephardic, because his father, the great-grandfather and grandfather was a Sephardic Jew, but I think one of the parents' side was actually Mizraim. Anyway, so here is when part of the Golden Age, right? Oops. Oh, I have it here. All right, so that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you guys. I appreciate your time to be with me on all these slides. I think I was able to show you everything that I wanted to show you. Let me see if I can find you something here. I'll just do it over here. Let me see. Maimonides. This is the picture of Ramban, very well-known guy. This is his picture of the Sephardic Jew, Maimonides, well-known, or AKA Rambam. All right, so he contributed a lot to our Jewish community. So, you know, it's something that we always remember, people they contribute to, or not only to society, but also to our Jewish communities. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you learned something about the Sephardim origin, heritage, ancient origin, and also that we are the people of the book. And that's why we the Muslims, you know, in the Quran said we are the people of the book because of this connection that we have with Muslims. They knew who we are. Anyways, thank you so much. May Hashem bless all of you guys. Thank you for your time.